Our next segment is a topic that Larissa has touched on, and it's something that's near and dear to my own heart, and hopefully to a lot of you out there as well. It's the topic of women in tech, and I'm very pleased to bring up our excellent moderator from Bitkom, Kim Klebolte. And at some point, I am going to get your name right.
Yeah, thank you very much, and also, again, a warm welcome from my side. I was really looking forward to this panel, because I guess women in tech is a topic where a lot of CEOs talk about, but then they don't really know, what do we do, how do we implement it in our day-to-day business, and what are what's the research behind it, what are the metrics, and for this, it's a great pleasure to have one of our distinguished speakers here. It's Laurie Rodriguez. She's the CDO of the initiative Women in Tech, and they're doing global work to promote education, to promote women and girls in STEM. And we already talked for 1.5 hours when we had our preparation for this talk. So we try to bring the most relevant insights. We try to summarize the most important numbers on our slide deck. So before we dive into the questions, really, Laurie, the stage is yours. Just give us a brief insight of what you've done in the past 30, 25 years and how that leads to your way of being in charge of women in tech now.
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. And we had some really good, provocative discussions, so hopefully we can have some fun here today. So my background is I've spent 25 years in technology. Back in the 90s, I actually helped build and lead an IT department for the #3 marketing promotions agency in the world, with logos like Nike, Unilever, Miller Brewing Company, Heinz, et cetera. That's where my passion for technology really came to be, because if you could transform something digitally as arguably unimportant as marketing, then imagine what it could do for healthcare and government and education and on and on. And so that's where I came across a company named Gartner. I think a few of you know that, and they happened to be headquartered where I was living. So I said, I'm going to work there. I spent 6 months networking to get my way in there as a contractor, and then spent the last 15 or so years building products for our C-suite technology leaders in Gartner executive programs. In that process, I interviewed over 1,000 C-suite technology leaders and business leaders, and you can imagine there were very few women in those numbers. At first, I was like, so what, doesn't really matter. But then it became quite apparent it really did. And so I was part of that great resignation, and about 1.5 years ago, I started working on a book called The Hidden Lives of 12 Women in STEM. And that's where I came across this organization and the founder, Ayumi, who is this amazing visionary woman who understands that it's not enough to have vision, you actually have to have action that leads to real tangible impact. So there's some of the numbers. So it's since 2018, so we're pretty much still in startup mode, and she asked me to come on board, and I took on 2 roles. One is Chief Digital Advisor for Global, and I also co-lead the US chapter. So it's been interesting to move from commercial to nonprofit. That is a whole nother world. And then also startup mode, building the entire infrastructure, if you will. So I've been checking out some of the booths here, which is pretty cool. And that's my background into how I got to Women in Tech. Pretty cool what they do, and why I chose this organization. There's so many really wonderful women in tech organizations out there today. But there's a big focus on not leaving any woman behind. So if you think of, we have 23 local chapters. In the US, the problems are very different than, say, Zambia or India. And in parts of Zambia, girls can't even go to school because they're spending quite a lot of time gathering water for the community and their families. And so part of that is going all the way to root cause and understanding at those local needs and building things like wells in Zambia, or computer labs in India, or mentor programs in the US or France or Germany. So we go through all of that. There's also an advocacy program, pulling together public, private, and NGO to change policy, because it's not enough to change women. We're actually not broken. But there are some needs that we have, and so working to help women survive and thrive, but at the same time working on creating environments that support us.
So in the conversation we had right before the panel, you said women are key to the digital transformation, which is kind of the overarching motto of today's panel. So what brought you to this conclusion of 25 years getting the deep dive into various industries?
Yeah, there's two main factors. One is positive and one is negative. So which one do you want to go to first?
I'd say we start with the positive here.
Okay, so there's the positive. And that's why this panel is called the Economics of Women in Technology. I mean, we've got two sides here. The first is sort of internal. And yes, please do take a picture of this. Take this back to your executive committees, your boards, your leadership teams, because the numbers matter. And I know in talking to CIOs for a long time, thankfully, they're a lot more business savvy than they were when I began, but they talked a lot about the technology and not enough about revenue and EBITDA and things like that. So, I just want to call your attention to two. Imagine if you went to your executive committee and you said, hey, I have this initiative that others have put into the market that can bring 10x, that magical 10x increase in profit. Would you do it? The answer would be yes, because it's proven, right? The other is, imagine you're going to your investors, your VC, and you're pitching, and you can bring a startup that, based on data, shows that it's going to bring 2 times the revenue for every dollar invested. You do it, right? Like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Why are there not more women leaders in organizations and women founders? I mean, the proof right there is in the numbers. The second on the positive side is, look at this. 70 to 80% of consumer purchases are driven or influenced by women. That's remarkable. And yet when you walk around to these customer journeys and we talk about customer experience, if you're not interviewing women, if you don't have women at all levels of decision making, you can't capture that appropriately. All the way down to your coders who are making those final coding decisions to be more inclusive or not. If they don't understand the needs, because it's not something they know at all, they're going to make coding decisions that don't account for women, people of color, people with disabilities. So you have to have your coders look like your audience. And then at the leadership decision, it's very easy to make decisions that are based on what you know and what your experiences are. You have to bring in people who know the experiences of at least half the population, which is women, which is why it's critically important to bring women into your digital transformation. Because look at this upside, $12 trillion market, potentially $28 trillion is on the table. But if you don't have women a percentage, like at least a third of your leadership, you're going to miss out on this market opportunity. So if you hear the words, we have to focus on growth, right? You can bring in these numbers. You have gobs of market opportunity out there. So that's the positive side.
So I guess we all love the good news, but then I guess we're curious to hear the bad news. So if you want to get a shocking fact to your next board meeting, what would be your number 1 or 2 data that what research has shown is kind of the shocking fact of not including women in any of this?
Yeah, so there's the best person out there, and I forget her name, but she's written a book called Invisible Women. Invisible Women. It's about this big, and it's stat after stat of the most, like, you start reading it and you pick it up and you throw it against the wall because it's just so sad and infuriating. When we are not visible in the data sets, bad things happen, and we die. And I'll give you one example. I could give you lots, but I'll give you one that's kind of shocking and encapsulates all of it, and especially here in Germany, where you're a car country. This one kind of hits home. So in a similar car crash, all other things being equal, a woman is 17% more likely to die, and 73% more likely to be seriously injured in that same car crash. How do we accept that? Like, it's just astonishing to me. And worse yet, at least in the US, we don't even track fetal deaths. So when we tell a pregnant woman, and I have 5 kids and a grandmother of a 1-month-old, so happy about that. When we tell a woman, oh, this is how you wear the seatbelt, it's bullshit. They don't know. They don't even track it. We don't even capture how many babies die in utero in a car accident. That's how little we really test or care about women when we're designing cars. So in 2003, and the data is really fuzzy on this, I've done research. In Europe, you're a little better, thank God, but in the US, it wasn't until 2003 that there was a female crash test dummy that they put in the passenger seat and is less than 5 feet tall and about 100 pounds and doubles as a child. So when you look at car crash data, keep that in mind. The cool thing is, I was wandering around Berlin yesterday, checking the sites, and I came across this door that said Volkswagen Mobility Innovation Center. It's really cool. You've got a lot of car concepts, and when we talk about digital transformation, Volkswagen is now becoming a mobility company, right? They're transforming at the highest level their entire business model and their focus. I was quite pleased when I did a little research to see they also have this real diversity program. They really want to get their company to more better represent their audience and their communities, which if you think about it, if you're using digital twins in smart cities and you're feeding data on those crash tests, you're going to kill a lot of people. So it's super important that, particularly in your digital transformation, that you have a lot of people at all levels of the organization that look like your communities, that look like your customers. It's critical. So that's the negative side of things.
So maybe if you want to sum it up, because we have a lot of important decision makers in our audience today, and I guess of what I can see from the outcome of you, it's a lot of people interested in these topics. So what do we do about it? What are the tangible takeaways? What should we start and stop doing?
So take a picture of that. There's a lot of things you can do. The stuff in blue kind of supports the two things at the top. And I could talk for hours on each one of these. You can go Google the information. Go find it. Do the work yourself. So the most important thing is to promote women. We have all of these programs, women sending us to leadership programs and mentorship programs and upskilling and this, as if we're broken. But I showed you, and I started with the facts. The data proves that it's actually reversed. The environments are broken that we sit in. And if you make the environment for women more inclusive and people of color more inclusive, your profits grow. So the environments need to digitally transform and just transform to make them more inclusive for all types of people. So I spoke with a very big tech company, a DEI person, 2 weeks ago. Big name, but I won't mention it here. And what they did is they just looked at, and this is really important, this is a very tactical thing you can do tomorrow. They looked at the data for all the women in their organization, as well as how the tenure, the average tenure to promote somebody. And any woman that was over that tenure, they offered a promotion. And you can be here, lowering standards. Not that at all. I just showed you what happened. So women are over-mentored, we're overdeveloped, we actually outperform. From the time we start in grade school, all the way through and in the workforce, when you look at performance data alone, women outperform their male colleagues. So this notion that you're lowering standards, again, bullshit. So when you just start promoting women, you're going to start capturing the market opportunity as well as your profitability measures as well. So just do that. And then the other thing is stigmatizing dads. Women leave the workforce when they have children, not necessarily because they want to be stay-at-home moms. It's an economic thing. Because we've missed out on promotions, because we don't see a path forward, because we're frustrated at work, when life gets complicated, that could be that you've partnered up with somebody and you like to travel a lot, or they're moving and you have to go with them, or you have to make that decision, or there's elder care, or there's children involved. Your life gets complicated and you have to make these microeconomic decisions at home. And so in that discussion, the woman raises their hand for because it's financially better for the family, and they're frustrated, so they step back from the work. If we stop stigmatizing dads, we allow them to be the ones who pick their kids up from daycare or the ones who go to the open houses at school, you're actually making it easier for women to stay. If you stop stigmatizing dad for doing housework, women's work at home, you make it more likely women will stay. So those two things at the top are your two biggest takeaways, and then you can Google the rest of them as to why they're important.
Thank you very much, Laurie. I guess that was almost on time. And again, I saw many people having their phones out to really take pictures. The idea of this 50-minute input was to bring in some thought-provoking numbers and statistics for you to really think through it and seeing women as an economic powerhouse, not only as kind of a nice thing to do to promote women within your companies. And Laurie will stick around. We do have our She Transforms IT lounge over there. So if you want to have a chat, if you want to join our network, and if you're just interested in what we all together as society can do to bring more women into tech, feel free to say hi, grab a coffee, and we're really excited to meet all of you. Thank you very much.
Bye.